If in doubt, fake being a cow. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews and to another video in the series where I recap and review every single Animorphs book. And welcome to the first Animorphs video of 2022. By my calculations, we've got 18 videos to get through this year, so we'd better get going. Today, we are talking about Animorphs 28, The Experiment, which I already love because there is a cow on the cover, but also Axe books tends to be a good time. This book was ghostwritten by Amy Garvey, who also wrote some books called Glass Heart and Cold Kiss, assuming this is the same Amy. That's what I found online. The taglines on these book covers are always ominous, but for some reason the italicized very is just really creeping me out this time. So we begin. Axe fills us in on the basics of the plot that's been going on. I'm not going to do that. You can just go watch the playlist of videos. There's also a reminder that Tobias is the only person that Axe would consider a true shawm, which is like kind of your best pal. A really good friend. You'd lay down your life for them. They're the best. Which also makes sense because Axe is kind of Tobias's uncle because Elfangor, Axe's brother, is Tobias's dad. I'd forgotten that had happened. There has been so much weird stuff going on. So we start the actual plot of this book with Axe telling us about his little home he's created for himself out in the fields, his scoop, which is also what we call getting Luna's food, so I'm hoping she's not going to notice I've said that word. Like any scoop, it is mostly open with only a small area covered by a semi-spherical roof, and in my case the scoop had to be very small so that I could fold the roof down and erase all visual evidence of it. I only had a few things in the scoop: a world almanac that my friends had given me, a photograph of a delicious cinnamon bun, some human clothing, and one other thing only recently acquired. One very important other thing that has changed my life. A television. I feel like it's a staple for 90s content, we are still in the 90s, to feature a character from another world being obsessed with the television. Anyone else? I feel like that came up a lot. And according to Axe, it rivals the cinnamon bun itself as the finest creation of human society. So every day, Tobias and Axe get together to watch various shows, and Axe learns about things like kissing, which to him seem very weird, but to be fair, he doesn't have a mouth, so I can see how there'd be a bit of a learning curve there. Marco shows up having got the day off school for a teacher conference, so Tobias makes his excuses and leaves. He says he's got his reasons, but we all know, spending time with Marco, not the best activity. Marco suggests that he and Axe go into town to pick up a TV guide, so Axe will always know what's on. Fun fact, the only time my family ever buys a TV guide is Christmas. I don't know why. That's the only time we buy them. Axe morphs into his Animorphs human mix, and we learn a little bit about what it's like to have a mouth. Humans do a great deal with their mouths, most of it rather pointless. So true. As they're heading into town, someone calls to them from a truck. Wait, no. A truck calls to them. It's Eric the Chi disguised as a truck. That makes more sense. They hop into the hologram of the truck, inside which is Eric in his normal Chi form. A Federal Express truck, Marco said. Isn't that copyright infringement? Eric formed a metallic grin. They can call my lawyer. He was Moses' law professor. Again, I request The Adventures of the Chi series. I want to know what Moses' law professor was like. So, what plot is Eric here to drop? The Yicks, Eric said finally. We've learned that they've used several fronts to purchase an animal testing laboratory and a meat packing plant. I'm beginning to feel this may not be wholesome cow content, based on the cover. So the Chi have only just found out about this, and it turns out the properties were purchased about a year ago. They don't know what the Yicks are doing, they only know that they own them. But it isn't looking good. They meet up to discuss the plan because that's what the Animorphs do. Axe is sad to be missing TV, particularly the messages in between shows, which is the most ominous way of describing adverts I've ever heard. Jake has said they need to hop to it, so they all meet in the barn to decide on exactly what the plan is going to be, and to speculate as to just what the Yicks might be planning. Poison the food supply, Cassie suggested, as she forced a medicine down the throat of a goose. Cassie's working, I should say. That's not just one of her hobbies. Although it kind of is. Kill a lot of people? No, I said. If the Yicks wished to kill a lot of humans, they could simply use their Draken beams from orbit to ignite the atmosphere and incinerate all life on the planet. Cheery stuff, Axe. Keep it light. Keep it light. So the first part of the plan is to go and check out the animal testing site, which seems like a smart plan. Axe queries just what this is, and we learn the Animorphs' viewpoint on animal testing. They are also about as close to hell as anything humans create, Cassie said. Now, Cassie makes the point she isn't against using animal testing to find new drugs that might fight against cancer or other incurable diseases, but she is against using them to test for makeup and such, which is pretty valid. But no time to debate animal testing, it's bird of prey time. So they get to the animal testing facility, which from the outside looks fairly harmless. There is, however, an armed guard set into the fence, and even though they could morph small, I think that metal gate is going to be a challenge for them to get through. I don't know how much I should be focusing on this, because it's kind of just like flavour to the book, but Axe keeps reliving soap opera moments, like the idea of a slow zoom in his own life. It's main character energy. I'm here for it. So just as they're remarking on the fact that Axe has started doing this, a rabbit runs into the fence and gets electrocuted. It's actually more likely a force field rather than an electric fence. And looking around, they spy quite a lot of dead animals, which confirms that theory. Which means the only way in is through the front door, where the guards will certainly be on the lookout for those pesky Andalite bandits. A 30-foot truck pulls up and Tobias overhears the driver say he has the chimps they've been waiting for. Chimpanzees, Cassie reasons, would be useful if they were doing some kind of behavioural research, and the driver says he'll be back with more tomorrow at 4 p.m, which is darned convenient for them. So normally the plan would be to go and grab some monkey DNA from the gardens and just be done with it, but they don't know what kind of chimpanzees the truck is carrying. The truck then goes past again and Rachel spots a sticker from the university. So they come down the highway, get off across from the new mega mall, come up Broad Street, right? Prince Jake said. He was silent for a while, deep in thought, then, I think I've got an idea. Could work. Is it an insanely dangerous, nearly suicidal idea? Marco asked brightly. Yep, sure is. Yay! Marco has Gimli energy. They all meet together after school the next day. Tobias and Axe having scoped out the surrounding territory, and they've determined that the time it takes for the trucks to go through a nearby tunnel is about 7 minutes. So as the truck in question pulls up to the lights, the Animorphs in Burnmore flap up onto the roof of the truck. With the tunnel only 2 blocks away, they start to demorph, which is not an easy feat on the top of a moving vehicle. As the truck enters the tunnel, they flatten themselves down to the roof to avoid being, mangled on the roof of the tunnel, before they make kind of a human chain down to the door. Cassie manages to open the back door of the truck, wherein something is making an ee-yak noise, which, to be fair, I'd make a noise too if I was going along in the back of a moving vehicle and someone opened the door. The driver behind the truck watches all of them break in, but apparently he's a bit of a rebel too, so he doesn't seem to care too much. In fact, he cheers them on before overtaking. Axe doesn't have enough grip in Andalite form to actually make it through the door, so with 2 minutes to go before they're out of the tunnel, he morphs to human. He tries to haul himself in, but his back half is still too Andalite, he's too bottom heavy, so the other Animorphs have to just kind of drag him into the truck with seconds to go, all while the chimps look on, very confused. With very little time before the truck reaches its destination, they need to acquire the monkeys. Cassie, who Axe observes seems to be having some sort of argument with herself, is the first to acquire some monkey DNA. Jake opens the first cage, freeing the first monkey, who promptly wheezes on the floor. Cassie attempts to get the monkeys to leave with food, but the only thing that really works is Tobias flapping at them and making them head out of the back door. Prince Jake yanked the door down, but before he did, I saw one of the chimps climbing in the window of the truck while the driver exited quickly from the opposite door. A second chimp was bouncing maniacally on the roof of the car with the children. The children were screaming with joy. Their mother was also screaming, but perhaps not with joy. True Animorphs chaos. So they're even more short on time, but they morph into the chimpanzees and they get into the cages, Cassie locking them up behind them. And in morphing, we have a deep existential moment where Axe ponders just how sentient these chimpanzees are, and how maybe putting them in cages is not a good thing. Which then begs the question, based on Animorph rules, should they have got permission to morph the chimpanzee? So Marco gets a bit cross and claims that Cassie is only there to save the chimpanzees, she does not care about the rest of them. A silence fills the room, Marco said, sardonically. Animal lovers. Typical. They care more about animals than they do about humans. If we were doing this for some other reason, we'd have Cassie giving us a bunch of crap about not using sentient creatures. But she's thinking she can maybe save the chimpanzees, so hey, if it's for the sake of animals... But before they can have the rest of that argument, the truck doors open and the Animorphs are wheeled out in their cages, through and into the building where there is a room full of other chimpanzees. Axe gets offered a cookie by a kindly-looking human, which he gladly takes and enjoys. He's having a happy time chowing down when someone clicks a collar around his neck and swings him into a brand new cage. I took a look around as the 3 men left to unload my friends. I appeared to be in some kind of holding room. It was covered by small white squares of a hard, somewhat shiny substance. Tiles, I believe they are called. There was a drain in the centre of the floor. It is never a good idea to spend any time in a place where there is a drain in the centre of the floor. It implies the room can be hosed down or will require to be hosed down. No, just don't do it. Just leave. The handlers head out. The Animorphs assume that they just need to go somewhere, and Cassie starts morphing down to human. She's wondering if Axe can get to the computer and figure out what the Yicks are doing. And just as Cassie gets back to human, the doors to the lab open and it becomes clear why those handlers were so keen to leave. He stepped boldly into the room, swaggering like the conqueror he was. He was Andalite in form. His host body is an old Andalite warrior named Aloran Semita Koras, but he was no longer Aloran. He was no longer an Andalite at all, except in outer form. He's here! It's Visser 3, come to inspect the monkey lab. Thankfully, the cages block Cassie from view, so she can try and remorph while the others try to distract the Visser. He doesn't seem to care about the shouting monkeys. In fact, he seems rather bored. This seems like some sort of routine visit. It's just catastrophic bad luck that they happen to have come at the same time. Poop him! Marco yelled suddenly. So that's what they do. Marco hits Visser 3 directly in the face. Axe splats him in the eye stalk, and then the other chimpanzees join in too. The Visser and his assistants are soon covered, so they just sort of flee. I mean, hopefully he brought an outfit change. Although I suppose that does beg the question, if you were covered in poop, morphed, and then morphed back again, would you still be covered in poop? I want to know. The tactic had succeeded brilliantly. Then from beyond the door came the thought-speak sound of Visser 3's rage. Kill them all! Oh dear. So the human controller who argues with the Visser that this is maybe a bit much gets his hand cut off. And Visser 3 explains that he was only there to shut down the facility anyway. The plan has succeeded. Phase 2 has succeeded. They are on to the main plan. The Visser withdrew his tail. He bent over and picked up the human controller's severed hand. He looked at it with interest and then tossed it to the injured man. Here, reattach it and destroy these creatures. He turned and stalked away, but then stopped. Bring the Taxons in from the control room. No point wasting fresh meat. Oh, he would be getting extra credit in villain school for that interaction, I'm sure. The controllers leave again, presumably to get the Taxons, and the Animorphs demorph at a pace. Cassie starts letting the other chimpanzees out, which leads to another argument. Marco argues that they should just fly out of there. If they release the other chimpanzees, the Yeerks are going to know that the Animorphs were there, and they will up security on the meatpacking plant. Whereas if they don't let them out, no one's going to be counting the amount of chimpanzee skeletons left after the Taxons have had their fill. But Cassie counters. Right, we stay as chimpanzees. Rachel has Cassie's back because she's a good friend and she likes the idea of chimpanzees getting their revenge. Cassie was already halfway into chimpanzee morph. Rachel was following. I waited to see what Prince Jake would do. Oh, so much for me being in charge, Prince Jake muttered. Then he began to morph. I haven't been that mad at Jake's leadership lately, so I won't comment here. The door opens and the Taxons come in, but Taxons are no match for 6 sentient, fully sentient, human-brained chimpanzees. And they're ready to cause havoc, armed with a number of makeshift weapons, including a computer monitor. Rachel even fights using a torn-off Taxon leg, because she's a badass. They race through the lab, losing a few chimpanzees on the way as they get distracted by shiny things. They see other animals being tested on. Dogs, rats, all of the above. I soon saw why humans prefer to draw an arbitrary line between themselves and other animals. Had humans been used as these animals were used, the only appropriate descriptive word would have been torture. Now, as you will know, I did not read this series when I was a kid, but I can safely say that if I had read this book as a teenager, this would have been a catalyst for me getting into, let's stop animal testing fully. This is the kind of inspiration I needed as a kid. So they evidently managed to escape, given that the next scene is Axe running through the meadows having a tasty snack. And he reflects that on the Andalite homeworld, they live in harmony with all the other creatures. I mean, if you can morph them and you can get inside their heads, you would. The same cannot be said of Earth. Tobias swoops in with a present for Axe. It's a universal remote, so you can change the channel without even getting up. Am I showing my age? I can't remember a time where that wasn't a thing. But I would have been 4 in the 90s, so maybe we didn't have one. I don't know. While Axe is distracted by a rerun of Friends, Tobias muses how does Axe have so many channels? And it turns out he's basically hacked the system. It's some garbage and, just a little stolen power line, it's fine. As Axe is flicking through the channels, they get to the news and we find out that those 6 chimpanzees that they freed from the truck have been taken to the gardens and they're going to be fine. Well, at least those chimps will have better lives, Tobias said. Yes, I hesitated. Humans are inconsistent. Yeah, they are. We are. But you know what? We have to spend tomorrow observing a slaughterhouse. So how about we just chill? Let's watch a sitcom. Oh, the second half of this book's going to be cheery. I can just feel it. While the other kids go to school, Tobias and Axe check out the meat packing plant. And then they all meet in the barn because, as usual, Cassie has to work on some sick animals and there's homework to be done. School life and being a saviour of the world is hard to balance. What can I say? There is no force field over the plant. Axe says this is likely due to the size. It would just be too difficult. But there is a GLEAT biofilter, which we encountered in the book with the bats. And this means that only cows or controllers can go through. Human controllers, probably it's cows and humans. So if we go in as cows, Marco said. Cows in a slaughterhouse. Does anyone else see a problem with that? Show of hands. Who would like to be a cow in a meatpacking plant? I hate to say it, Marco, but I think the cover might indicate that this plan does in fact go ahead. The other issue is that the cows are kept about 2 miles away from the plant and they all have specific ear tags, so they can't just morph random cows and turn up. But they don't all need to be cows. The biofilter won't eliminate animals that are inside other animals, which is a horrifying idea, but it means that some of them can morph fly and hide in the nose of those morphed cows. So basically we have a choice. We can go as burgers or boogers, Marco said. It's a great line. The plan for tonight is to go and get the cow DNA and the tags, and tomorrow is Saturday, so it's the perfect day to go and investigate and infiltrate the meatpacking plant. Axe and Tobias are going to go in, because if they have to demorph, it'll be less obvious than humans among cows. than a bird and a four-legged animal among cows. So that night, they flap off in owl morph. It's just Marco, Axe, Tobias and Rachel because Jake and Cassie have some other stuff they need to get done that evening, and the other two are there for security. Axe and Tobias are grabbing the cows, security, you get it. Flying around in a storm is not super easy, but it is very atmospheric for this cow rustling plan. It's pretty easy for Tobias to acquire a cow, but for Axe to do it, he needs to demorph to Andalite form, which is going to be a little bit trickier. Before he can do that, Tobias spots lights coming up the road. Somebody's coming out to see them. It's so dark, what can they possibly see? Rachel wondered. They could have night vision glasses, Marco said. They could see plenty, like, say, an Andalite. Well, they need to get that cow DNA, so they've got to try. Thankfully, the cows do not panic at the sight of an Andalite, though they do move away as Axe topples into the mud because his legs haven't come in properly yet. Escalating peril is happening, and those headlights are coming more into view. I hugged my arms to my body, I tucked my tail down along my back, which enlarged my profile. I bent my head forward, doing my best to simulate a steer's head. I even twisted my stalks forward to simulate horns. If in doubt, fake being a cow. Whoever it is getting out of the truck armed with beer bottles. It's just college kids there to do some cow tipping. As they approach this strange-looking cow, Axe thwacks them with his tail and knocks them unconscious, which leaves Axe to acquire the cow DNA and be home in time for Brady Bunch. I never watched it. Is it the Brady Bunch? I don't know. The next morning, Axe does his ritual that he always does where, he swears to destroy his enemies. It's kind of like my fun morning routine, but a little bit more violent. And then he and Tobias head on out. We spiraled down to the field. Our plan was simple. We had used the stapler to remove ear tags from the two relevant steer the night before. We now had the tags. Tobias and I were to morph the steer and Cassie would have fixed the ear tags. We had left the stapler at the site. A simple plan. Or so we thought. Oh, it's going to go well. First red flag is Tobias finding the steer instincts kind of hard to control, and the other steer seeming kind of scared of him. Axe morphs realises he accidentally acquired a cow, so he has to demorph, acquire a steer, and then remorph. It's all very intense. He and Tobias have a hard time getting hold of these steer instincts, and they do indeed start fighting each other. Cassie has to put herself between them. Steers are nice and docile because they've been neutered, and that's not a DNA thing. So yeah, they're just bulls. Boys, Axe, Tobias, listen to me. You are not steer, you are bulls. Bulls are very territorial. You want to fight right now, but that would be a bad idea. A very bad idea. With no time left to worry about this, Cassie basically bonks their heads together, tells them they need to pull themselves together, and shoves a staple through their ears. Though the farmers are going to be controllers, their hosts will be actual farmers with farming knowledge, and they will know they're not meant to be transporting bulls. This is all going to fall apart unless Jake has a plan. Marco? Think you can drive their truck? It would seem the plan is changing somewhat. So, the men do in fact immediately realise they're dealing with bulls, but then Gorilla Marco hits them on the head. There's fairly high body count in this one, just in terms of people being knocked unconscious. How do we make sure they stay out long enough? Take their clothes. That'll slow them down, Prince Jake said. Nothing like waking up naked in a cow paddock. Marco, still in gorilla form, puts on the clothes of the truck driver and pulls the cap down really far so no one will notice there's a gorilla doing the driving. It's because he still needs to be able to reach the pedals, that's the main reason. After a truly terrifying journey, which really did remind me of my recurring nightmare where I'm forced to drive even though I do not know how to drive, they make it to the meatpacking plant. Now that the cargo had been reshuffled, I had a better, clearer view out of the left side of the truck. I could see two armed guards approaching the cab. They seemed somewhat disturbed, possibly awed, possibly admiring, possibly frightened. The guards are very confused as to why this person is so terrible at driving, and having executed the world's worst three-point turn, Marco and Jake morph to flies in the cockpit of the truck in order to escape. Is it called a cockpit? I don't know what the front of a truck is called, but they morph flies so they won't know who was driving. I've never seen driving like that. No wonder the driver took off. He must have been drunk. He must be a lunatic. Hey, those are bulls! Transported like this! This really is nuts. The skinny man narrowed his eyes suspiciously. Andalite bandits? But of course not. Andalites can't drive trucks, and they wouldn't be stupid enough to be cows coming to a slaughterhouse, so it must be fine. So Tobias and Axe make their way through the biofilter with the other Animorphs hidden in their nose. Flies make their way out, leaving the two bulls on their own. As they start to discuss cartoons to distract themselves, they notice cow corpses being transported overhead. And really, I think this book's mission is to make me finally commit to being vegetarian. It's working. Because just after that, I will spare you it, but we get a graphic description of how cows are killed. I have faced death in battle, but never as a dumb beast going to slaughter. I have changed my mind, I said. Let's get out of here. I began to demorph. No time. Axe refuses to move. He is too scared, which earns him a cattle prod from one of the guys running the assembly line. Assembly line? Production line. He has to remind himself to demorph, but he's next in line. I looked to my right. The tool was coming for me, coming straight towards me. I could see the man's finger on the trigger. Then a new form, large, brown, looming up behind the man. Hey buddy, take the rest of the day off, Rachel said. She swung one massive grizzly bear paw. Thank goodness for Rachel. Whew, that was close. Controllers start flooding in. You can tell they're controllers because they are running towards the bear and not away from it. With Axe back in Andalite form, they can start the fight. Axe starts by, I think, cutting the hands off a controller who was wielding a chainsaw. It's unclear whether disarming means literally disarming or not. We never try to kill any controller, and humans in particular, since my human friends have a certain sentimental fondness for others of their own species, so we were careful, we were restrained. I applied my tailblade with restraint, but it was difficult. I'd been badly frightened as I have ever been, and as irrational as it might be, I resented the human controllers who were even now attempting to butcher me. Intense stuff. They make their way across the room to find the others hemmed in with an army of controllers surrounding them and Hawk Bajir coming out of the walls and all the above. There is a door behind Jake, but he can't get it open. They need Rachel's bear strength. She slams against the wall, but even with all of her grisly force, she does not have enough power. Then we heard the hated ThoughtSpeak voice we knew too well. How fitting, Visser 3 exulted. The end of the Andalite bandits comes here in a slaughterhouse. Take them, seize them, butcher them. Yes, butcher them. He's so dramatic. Rachel hits the door again, but nothing happens, and then Axe spots a keypad next to the door. One slash of the tail and a twist of the wires, and the door opens. After they all go through, Rachel pulls it closed behind them, buying them a little bit of time. Visser 3 will pour every controller he has into this place, Marco said. He'll bring them down from orbit. He'll have thousands of them here. And then they realise where they are. It looks like the chimpanzee testing room at the facility. But instead of chimpanzees, these are humans, not dead, just floating around in biostasis. What the? Cassie said. Then she reared up on her hind legs and placed her paws against the bars so she could look at the chart on the outside of the nearest cage. Project Obedience, she read. Medication effective. Doesn't say what medication, just Formula 71. This cannot be going well. Axe manages to get into the computer because somebody has left it on and not locked their screen, which is bad data protection practice. But it's very good for our purposes, and he looks up Project Obedience. The computer replied in a simulated human voice. Project Obedience is the brilliant insight of our great and glorious leader, Visser 3, hero of the Taxon Rebellion, scourge of the Andalite fleet, conqueror of Earth. Good grief, Rachel glanced at the motionless humans in the cages. What's even more grieving is that we find out the project is designed to use genetically engineered brain components to erase the part of the brain responsible for free will. Yep, that's horrifying. So their plan is to pop that formula into the meat and have a nice compliant human race ready and waiting for them. Cassie does not believe what the computers say. They're saying it's 100% effective. There's absolutely no way. Cassie wants to free these humans trapped in biostasis. Marco says no way, they've lost their free will. Visser 3 will just order them to attack us. We are not leaving humans in cages, Cassie said angrily. They're not humans anymore, Marco raged. They might as well be controllers. No free will. Slaves. Now you listen to me, Cassie said. No one, nothing can eliminate free will. Don't be ridiculous. Even with a yeek in your head, you have free will. Not the will to do, but the will to think, to believe, to hope or love or whatever. And Axe then has a thought. If this is 100% effective, why put the humans in biostasis and in cages? A sudden movement. At the far end of the room, a small, older human male wearing spotless white and holding a Draken beam. Don't move, I'll shoot, Rachel supplied. Don't move or you'll shoot. Maybe not the best time to be finishing sentences, Rachel. Jake knocks the Draken beam out of the man's hand and he begins to cry. The man, not Jake. Jake's chill. He'll kill me. Of course. He was going to kill me anyway. It was only a matter of time. So, we learn that, surprise, surprise, under the threat of you will be killed if this is not successful, they fabricated the fact that the study was successful. And just to make you feel a little bit more ick about the whole process, this controller says, don't worry about the people in cages. We were sure to make people that no one would worry about, so we took them off the streets, or people who had no families. It's all good, guys. They're worthless. Uncomfortable. Cassie was at his throat before the human could draw his next breath. She knocked him down on his back, pressed her 2 front paws down on his shoulders and bared her teeth inches from his face. We do not dispose of humans, Cassie said. We need a way out of here, right now, or we won't leave you to Visser 3. We'll unfreeze these humans and leave you to them. Yes, Cassie, best character. So they're going to head out and the man begs to go with them because otherwise he's pretty doomed. And there is that loud thwacking of something very heavy hitting that outer door. They need to get out of there and Jake agrees they're bringing the people with them. Everyone climb out of the cages. We're getting out of here, Prince Jake ordered. Says who? A gnarled old man demanded. Says no one, Cassie said gently. Your choice. Stay or go. Leaning heavily on the free will stuff, Cassie. They will die if they stay here. We've not got long. From the guidance of the controller, who was definitely going to be killed because he lied about his project going well, while they make it out of the building. And as they're leaving, Axe asked, you know, the formula didn't work on humans, did it work on chimpanzees? And they said they saw no change in the chimpanzees' ability to use free will, either because it didn't affect it, or they don't have free will, they don't know. But Cassie thinks she probably knows the answer. In the annals of stupid, screwed up, pointless missions, that was the stupidest, most pointless of them all, Marco said. Pretty much. I mean, they changed nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because it's the next day. They made it out alive. They're in the mall. Drink if you're drinking. And yeah, they managed to stop a Yik plan that, had it gone ahead, would not have worked. We set some chimpanzees free, Cassie said. And some humans too, which, Marco, is even better. Valid? I thought we were agreeing that we should treat everyone the same. But okay, it's fine. They saved some lives. I'll allow it. And at the end, they all eat burgers, which is, if anything, the most unrealistic part of this entire series so far, because I never want to touch a burger again. And that is Animorphs 28. It's a pretty intense start to the new year, and I think it's only going to ramp up from here on out, so let's get excited. As you will know, there will be an Animorphs video every month of this year, but in April and in August we will have 4 videos, one every week. I'm very excited to do it. It's going to be great, it's going to be a lot of work, so if you haven't already, please do subscribe. It makes me feel loved and appreciated, and it motivates me to finish this series. You can also follow me on social media, come hang out on Discord where we have a dedicated Animorphs channel if you want to chat about things in this video or any Animorphs content. That's down there. That's all from me, and I will see you in the next one. It's gonna be some bloopers now. Welcome back to Dead Good Book Reviews and to another why can't I talk today? Axe asks every time. I think I'm okay. I can do this. I'm okay. I even twisted my stalks forward to stimulate horns. This is all gonna fall apart unless they're not humans anymore. Rocco maged.